Hey there, my name's Curtis Lucas and you're watching Empire Building. So I'm going to cut right to the point in this video. Obviously from my last video, as many realize that I sold some stocks on the initial rally that we saw in Bitcoin and the NASDAQ immediately following the announcement of the official full-fledged invasion of Russia into Ukraine. Now, I want to further explain my reasons for doing so and answer some questions that I'm sure a lot of people are wondering. Namely, did I buy back in? How do I feel about seeing the price surge higher, quote unquote, without me? So we're going to get into this because this is actually a really important topic that I think warrants a further discussion, because in your investment journey, you're going to make mistakes. And again, I'm going to keep using air quotes throughout this entire video, I think. But again, like, a mistake is relative. You're not going to make the perfect move every single time. And even long-term investors will eventually sell at some point if they think that their investment thesis has changed for any reason whatsoever. All we can really do is evaluate the information that is available to us and make the best decision that we know how to make. And sometimes, even with all that information and even with a good, sound, well thought out theory, it's not necessarily going to go the way that you think. This reminded me of what happened to Warren Buffett, one of the greatest investors of our time. And if anyone can recall, during the original downturn on in the stock market during the COVID crash, he sold out of all of his airline positions at a significant loss, I might add, only to see it rally immediately after. So yeah, it happens to the best of us. So that's not, getting it right isn't what it's all about. You can get things wrong, but you do also have to keep in mind that the story doesn't end immediately following that. Sometimes these theories can take time to play out. In the case of Warren Buffett, he just acknowledged that air travel is not the sector that he was interested in being exposed to for the prolonged future. So for the purposes of that trade, he didn't see the point in being exposed to that market, given the current conditions, at least at the time. But yeah, it turned out to be the wrong time to make that decision. Whether or not it was the right move for him personally, that's entirely up for him to decide. So for me, for starters, everyone seems to think that I somehow sold out completely. No, I sold 20% of my position before the Russia aggression began. So that's still actually higher than where the stocks are currently. So I'm still net positive from that particular trade. I sold another 20% on the rally that we saw. So again, it basically split the difference. I'm probably about even. So no, I'm not feeling a huge amount of FOMO as a result of this, but I am evaluating what's taking place, because there are a number of things that have changed as a result of what we've witnessed here. But I'm not ready to make any judgments, because this departure from the norm is something that I'm still evaluating. And I don't fully understand it yet, and I don't think, well, anybody, if they're being honest, they do either. So what do I mean by this? For starters, on the morning of the official invasion, we saw the pre-market was down heavily and immediately began to get bought up, and it just didn't end. The NASDAQ went down from nearly 4% or so to up almost 4%. Overall, an 8% move, or about almost 9% move from the open to the close that day. That is astonishing, and certainly something that caught many people off guard, even the professionals. This was not normal market behavior. Now, obviously, tons of people have their theories as to why this has happened. And since then, at least in terms of the broader markets, we've seen some concerted pullback. But Bitcoin, on the other hand, has basically diverged from those patterns. It's no longer following the NASDAQ, and on its own is just charting its own path higher. I've heard the term used, chaos hedge. So yeah, obviously, considering the specific geopolitical events that are taking place, it is an interesting theory to suggest that Bitcoin has become a safe haven asset in the sense that it is protected from seizure, which is something that is an active concern inside Russia. And again, also apparent even here in Canada from previous events that we've been talking about. But this is something that honestly remains to be seen. While this is absolutely true and it is an incredible utility that Bitcoin provides, I'm not entirely convinced that that's what we've been witnessing. The other thing to realize is that we're still firmly within the downtrend. Now, I don't want to give the impression that I'm trying to make other people bearish or anything right now, but I am trying to give some perspective and explain where my mind's at right now. Because yes, I did sell, and there is an opportunity for me right now to basically buy in for an average cost in and around where I sold. And the other thing I have to point out is I didn't fully exit everything. I still have all of my Bitcoin, all of my Ethereum. I haven't exited out of any of those positions. I did exit out of all my DeFi positions, which are substantially lower right now from when I sold those out, even with this rally. So again, I have no regrets for making that decision. And again, a lot of the reasons that I chose to make that decision hasn't really changed. The theory that I'm working with, my working theory, hasn't changed. I still think we have to let things play out. At 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesday morning, so that'll be right about the time some people are viewing this or after. I'm recording this the night before. Jerome Powell is going to be testifying in front of the House Financial Services Committee, and we're going to hear a little bit more about what his intentions are, if any of these most recent events have influenced their decision making. And frankly, what I expect to happen is we will find out that they have little to no impact. The reality is inflation is still very, very high, and they have to begin tapering. I've heard people make the case that in light of these new events, it's going to make it more difficult for them to taper or raise rates. Frankly, I don't think that is the case. It's not the job of the Federal Reserve to support any of these measures that are taking place. They have a very specific mandate, and that is full employment, stable prices, and inflation. Currently, as far as the Federal Reserve is concerned, employment is at levels that they consider to be acceptable. So they must work at reducing that inflation. And this situation with the sanctions in Russia is going to lead to further inflation. We're seeing it already with oil surging. So that is going to add to even worse inflation, but it doesn't change the fact that the data was clear. We had an inflation problem before this happened. So you can't just blame it all on Russia. If they wait for this Russia situation to resolve, they're going to have a situation that is basically unmanageable. So nothing has changed in that regard. I don't know if this is the real reason why we're rallying, then I think we're in for some major trouble here. So yeah, this is what I want to see in terms of information that we need in order to make a better decision. So if that means I end up cost averaging at a higher price, then so be it. But these were the concerns that I had going into this, and I don't believe any of that has changed. It's not an easy thing to do to watch prices rise while you've got some cash sitting on the sidelines. Obviously, I'm not concerned because it's not like I took out a whole lot. And I don't believe this is inconsistent with my investment goals or strategies or any of that. There is a legitimate risk that this is nothing more than a bull trap. I know that's not what people want to hear, but these are the things that we have to evaluate. The reality here is I don't quite see what could possibly take us to new all-time highs in this current environment, except for one thing. And this is a massive long shot. It has everything to do with the ETF application submitted by Grayscale. The deadline for the decision by the SEC is, I believe, the 15th of March. They've sent it up for questioning. I know that there has been a overwhelming amount of responses, all mostly in support of the SEC approving this ETF. But I'm still skeptical that this will actually get approved, namely because they've already denied so many before it. It's not going to look good on them if they simply approve this one without the opportunity to approve others at the same time. So I don't think that is what we're going to be seeing. I think it will be another rejection. But I will say this, the most surprising development here was the pretty significant decoupling in the pattern and the step-by-step movements between the NASDAQ, the broader markets, and what Bitcoin has shown. And I do think that that had a lot to do with the fact that one of the shining examples of Bitcoin's utility is the ability for a person to have sovereignty over their own wealth, and taking that power of governments' ability to sanction your assets and seize them without any due course or warning. I do think that that's had an impact in terms of people's behavior. I don't think, however, that Bitcoin is quite ready for that on a broad scale. In order for that to be truly effective, we still need a lot more adoption than what we have now, because while it does, it certainly does prevent the possibility of seizure of those assets, it still makes it very difficult to utilize any of those funds for anything in particular, unless you can find someone who will accept that payment in Bitcoin. As soon as you are required to transition from Bitcoin into some other fiat currency, you must pass through the gatekeepers. And those gatekeepers have the exact same controls as the banks do. So this is what I mean when I say that Bitcoin's not ready for prime time yet. But it is, yes, it is an effective tool at protecting you from having those assets seized. But I'm not ready to declare Bitcoin some kind of chaos hedge. I think this was a very specific situation that led to a very surprising result. In hindsight, it makes sense, but in the moment, there was just too many things happening for anybody to rationally expect this to occur. So very quickly, I'm just going to pull up the charts. We'll have a look at where we are right now and try to get a broader picture of what we can expect over the coming weeks and months. So this is very quickly a shot of the NASDAQ on the hourly chart. But yeah, as you can see, we are still pretty firmly within this downtrend. And obviously, like I pointed out, Bitcoin has shown some divergence from the NASDAQ. Not entirely, but it's definitely apparent. But as it stands right now, yeah, we've had a massive move up. We made a new low and so far have completely failed to make a new high or even break out of the downtrend. So yeah, we're definitely not out of the woods yet in terms of the broader markets and tech stocks. Now, looking at Bitcoin itself, these trends look a whole lot better in terms of, like I said, showing that that break of these trends. Even if we just draw one from the last couple of highs, I expected this was probably going to hold, same as it did for the NASDAQ, but instead, no, we broke out. Now, I also realized that this kind of development occurred at one point when we were up here. And it got me bullish at the time. And I remember buying back, I had some money sitting on the sidelines, and it really looked like we were going to break out. And I remember buying right around here, and only to suffer this fall immediately afterwards. It was not an easy thing to live through. But this one does look significantly different, but we still haven't managed to make a new high. So that's what I'm waiting for. I'm prepared to miss out on some potential gains if I can see that we can continue a trend here. And again, even then, I'm only looking to dollar cost average, follow the simple basic rules that have been tested, tried and true. But for the time being, I want to see how these events are going to play out in the coming weeks and months, because ultimately speaking, I would not be surprised to see us stay at least range bound here, but I do not put, I don't discount the possibility that we have yet to put in a low in the next few months. There's a lot to be cautious about. The fact of the matter is, this is not like other conflicts in the past where, you know, the U.S. has gone to war. That's not what this is. This is an economic war. So any action that they take, it's not one directional. When the United States and the rest of the G7 sanction Russia, it also hurts them. It hurts their own economies. We heard in the State of the Union speech from Biden tonight that they're going to be tapping into their oil reserves in an attempt to try to stabilize those oil markets. But I don't think that's going to do a whole lot. Russia is a major supplier of that to the world economy. And this, I mean, if they really want to hit Russia, they got to block the oil. And I don't think that that's certainly off the table. They've been hesitant to go that far up until this point, but I don't see Putin standing down. Things are escalating in Ukraine. It's difficult to watch these things, but sooner or later, the effects are going to become apparent. And it might take time. But again, I look at all of these things taken as a whole, and it's not exactly the picture that I would paint that would send us to new all-time highs. So I think I have very legitimate reason to be cautious and to see how things develop. But at the same time, yeah, that's why I stay invested with a portion of this, still a substantial portion. So I'm not going to miss out on if it does increase. But yeah, let's just say I'm not convinced at this stage. So I think I'll leave it at that for now. So let me know what you think down in the comments. Are you a believer in this rally? Do you think we are headed for new all-time highs? What levels does it have to get to convince you that this, in fact, is going to take us there? And if not, what do you think is going to happen next? At this point, I'm pretty happy with the overall mix of exposure and cash that I have available. So I'm not feeling a whole lot of FOMO at this point. Whether it goes up, I'm okay with that. If it goes down, I'm okay with that. I don't think I'm prepared to really sell anything more at this point. I think I'm pretty happy with the overall balance of things. So I'm just going to sit back and wait and see what happens next. Well, that's it for this one. Now let's get back to empire building.